Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another YouTube exclusive of Philly Cooking with Maurice. And I'm here with Zach Ciavolella. Ciavolella. I got it right the second time, right?
Chavalella.
Ciavolella. Zach Ciavolella. All right. Welcome. How you doing, man?
Thanks, man. I'm good. I'm happy to be here. Happy to talk some birds. Excited for Sunday. Big day.
Yes, this is a big day. If this is your first time on our platform, this is a YouTube exclusive of our 13 Rings podcast. So, real quick, introduce yourself, let people know what you do and where they can find you.
Yeah, for sure. So, and again, I'm Zach Ciavolella. I'm the digital editor for Metro Philadelphia, and I'm the 76ers beat reporter for Philly Sports Network. So you may ask, well, what does that qualify you to talk about the Eagles? Well, I'm also co-host of Flipping the Birds, which is Philly Sports Network's Eagles podcast. Been doing that for about a couple of years now. So, something where if you're obviously, you have a home for podcasts if you're listening to this podcast, but if you're looking for, another Eagles specific listen, definitely check out Flipping the Birds. We do shows every Tuesday at 7:30, and we do Saturday shows in the morning as well. So that's just a little bit about me. I'm from the Philly area,
Mhm.
born in Philly, raised in South Jersey, bleeding green since I was young, and just working my way through this Sixers season, focused on the Eagles right now. What can I say?
The Sixers is another discussion itself. We talked a little bit before we recorded, but that's a whole nother issue. We'll get more familiar with that after the football season's over for sure.
We're here to talk about exciting things. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
exciting. Yeah, positive things for right now. Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm born and raised in Philly too. 444 sports fan. We do ask this question when we have guests on our main podcast. Let me ask you, who's your favorite Eagle?
Man, that's tough. I was raised in all sports watching a lot of old films. So uh,
Me
I'm
too.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm born in '95, but I've seen a lot of guys from way before that. So you talk about guys like Chuck Bednarik has always been like a legend in my family. That's just going back to my grandfather.
Concrete.
He Concrete Charlie, man. Just been like there's literally family stories,
Oh wow.
about Chuck Bednarik in my household. But Reggie White obviously is another huge answer there. Brian Dawkins, I feel like for anyone, especially growing up around the time that I did, B Dawk is huge.
Yes.
If you're an Eagles fan, there's so many tough trains. I've had the chance to meet Jason Kelsey and get to know, not really get to know him, but just kind of like personally meet him lately. And he's a guy who's been here for so long. If I'm narrowing it down to a single player, I'm probably gonna have to go B Dog just because of my
Yeah.
defensive tendencies.
Yeah.
But man, there's so many great options, especially
Yeah.
recently from guys like Jason to Brandon Graham and
Yeah.
Fletcher Cox is another guy who for
Yeah.
his entire career. And I've had plenty of opportunities to I say work with Jason, literally work with or rather with Fletcher, to literally work with Fletcher over the years, and he's always been a pleasure. So it's there's so many great Eagles to choose from, but
Yeah.
B Doc for me was transformative.
We are on the same page on so many levels because Brian Dawkins is my guy too. Brian Dawkins will level you. He will knock
Oh,
you out and just stand up
oh,
over you and say hallelujah. You know what I mean? That was
yes,
Brian.
sir.
That was Brian Dawkins. And
Man,
he,
listen, Jameis Winston. Everyone wants to talk about his speeches that he's talking about. Victories, the Lords, and all that. Man, Brian Dawkins was that, but he was serious. Like Brian Dawkins
yeah,
put the fear of God in people every single Sunday. There's stories of his teammates talking about just hearing him talk on Sundays and being
yeah,
afraid of Brian Dawkins. And that's how
yeah.
you know he was the man.
Yeah, I think he recruited to KO Spikes here one
Mm.
because of how he played on the field and his personality. And we both met Jason Kelsey too. Strange. I was just like one summer I was like, let me go get some. I got a taste for some barbecue. I went to Mike's barbecue and Jason Kelsey was in the back cooking. I was like,
Oh, that's
what?
funny.
I was like, what?
That's
Where did you
awesome.
come from? This
That's
big
awesome.
bearded dude.
Yeah, Jason's really cool. I had a lot of opportunities, so I covered Operation Snowball, which for those who don't know, the Philly Specials. That is the Eagles music group featuring primarily Jason, Jordan Mailata, and Lane Johnson.
Yeah.
So I did a lot of coverage for that, even to the point of, I was in the motorcade when we were going through Philly, giving gifts to all the kids and everything like that. So I had a couple opportunities with Jason through that, and just, I mean, a completely genuine person, like to the point where it really annoys me that people complain about his. I feel like a lot of people tend to complain about how, he's everywhere right now, and I think people tend to hold that against people. I think that's part of human nature. But it really annoys me when people do that with Jason, just because like he's not putting on a facade. Like this is Jason. He's just being him. He's not putting on an act. He's not seeking these things out. He's a person with great energy who other people gravitate towards, and so he's going to have a long, successful career. Well after he's obviously no longer in playing football. He's going to have a long and successful career just because of the person that he is. So I'm super excited for him. Excited for all the work that the Philly Specials did, especially this year. Operation Snowball, they got a gift for every child in the Philadelphia school district. It was an incredible opportunity, incredible, chance to really see what these guys are about behind the scenes. And him, Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata, just great guys on and off the field.
Yeah, man. They're awesome. They're really awesome. And the Christmas album's pretty good too. I like the Christmas album. They can sing, man.
They can sing. Oh, Mailata especially, dude. They had him. I felt bad for a minute, but Jason had him like singing on the spot at a couple of these things. And Jordan is like, he's almost kind of like faux shy. Like he's very friendly, and he's very open to being a little silly and stuff like that. But you getting put on the spot, and like it's happened to me before too. Like when people find out you can sing and you get put on the spot, it's tough. It's a tough spot to pressure, right? So it's a lot of pressure. So it was funny. I felt bad, but it was funny watching him go through that. But no, Jordan has got incredible bites, man.
Yeah, he does. All right, so let's get into the game. Sunday, NFC East. I don't know why sometimes saying that. NFC East Championship game. Eagles versus Commanders, 3 p.m.
Sir.
Let me just ask you this. How confident are you in the Bears?
It starts and it ends with the health of Jalen Hurts, I feel like, based on what we've been hearing, as they've been working through practice and as they've been working closer and closer, especially after hearing Jalen talk. I think it was earlier today. I'm pretty confident for Philadelphia. And the thing is, like, you can't ever overlook an opponent, right? Especially in the playoffs. You cannot.
Especially a divisional opponent, too.
Especially a divisional opponent. And I think there's a little bit to be said about playing a talented rookie QB. Just because I know you played him twice, there's still only so much film. And we saw this with CJ Stroud, where it's like, until you really get like a whole season of film on a guy, it's tough to really truly understand that, right? So Jaden Daniels is an incredibly talented quarterback. I think any defense has to, quote unquote, worry about facing a guy like that. But man, this defense is stacked. Vic Fangio has these guys ready to play. He's talking about, he's coming up with great comparisons for Darius Slay, man. His guys love him. The team is full of energy. Zach Bond went from a role player to a defensive player of the year candidate. Like, this defense is legitimate, and the offense is determined. And I think that's all you need to pull out a victory on Sunday.
Yeah, well, first of all, kudos to Howie, because he had a tremendous offseason. I think Saquon was the best addition, but Zach Bond is right behind him. They found him out of nowhere, basically, and they basically changed the player that he was to conform to Vic Fangio's offense, and he's flourished.
Well, what's really funny about Bond is that, and we had done a lot of research looking around like some of the New Orleans beats and stuff like that, and the kind of, not complaint about Bond, but kind of complaint about how he was used, is everyone's saying like, well, they're trying to use him in coverage too much. That's not his game. He's really more of a pass rusher. You want to put him on the outside. You want to rush him off the edge. And Vic Fangio has just completely transformed what he does. And there's so much to his new role in Philadelphia. And full credit to Zach Bond, who I'm sure has had many drug tests this year, like, because he has just elevated his play to such an incredible level. At like full credit to him for doing that, because he's been, I mean, man, he's been incredible. And I think this marriage with Vic Fangio has been great. I think this is the perfect thing that both guys needed. And you listen to Vic Fangio talk. We saw his exit from Miami, and we heard some guys talking in Miami after the fact, that weren't so high on Vic Fangio. When you have, I'll call him a little bit old school. He's definitely old school Vic Fangio, and that's not a bad thing. That's not a detractor by. In fact, I think that's for the specific situation. I think that's a great thing for Philadelphia. They needed to bring back a little old school with this defense, and I think that worked perfectly with Zach Bond. He's exactly the kind of player, that relentless, hardworking, guy who is going to do whatever's needed of him for the sake of his team. That's the kind of guy that Zach Bond is, and that's what Vic Fangio needed. And it's worked into transforming him into a crucial player that Philadelphia simply must bring back after the season, no matter what happens.
Oh, his asking price is going to be high.
It's
going to be high.
And we know Philly doesn't pay linebackers, but they didn't pay running backs either. So we'll see what happens.
No, and I gave credit to Howie, and I really do give him credit. But Bryce Huff, we don't need to talk about him.
Listen, man. Listen. As long as the weights outweigh the counterweights,
yes,
I think we're good to go. And as far as how it goes, like, not trying to blow smoke or whatever, but you still have to give him kind of residual credit as well for some of these Georgia guys continuing to develop, because a lot of Philadelphia had given up. And I'm not just talking about fans. I'm even talking about media members and stuff like that. Had given up on guys like Nakobe Dean and on Nolan Smith. And obviously, unfortunately, Dean's hurt, but man, was he playing incredibly up until that point. And Nolan Smith has, man, he's shocked me with not only the level he's reached, but how quickly he's reached it. So, and we're not even yet talking about guys like Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, who Jalen Carter's been, I said this the other day talking to some other Eagles writers. Jalen Carter, not only is he already better than Fletcher Cox was in year 2, but I firmly believe that he can have a better career than Fletcher Cox. And I love Fletcher Cox. I think he's one of the greatest Eagles of all time. So this is just the impact that Jalen Carter has had early on in his career.
Yeah, man. And for Nolan Carter, he was a late bloomer. I didn't really see it the first season. I'll be honest with you. I didn't see it. But he's really come on this season, especially now where we need the pass rush. Josh Sweat, he's a little on and off, but he overall, I want to say he, off the top of my head, he had 8 or 9 sacks this year. He's been okay, but Nolan Smith is the flash player that we want, and we're gonna have here for at least a couple more seasons. Josh Sweat, I don't know what's gonna happen with him after this season.
It's gonna be tough in free agency.
Yeah, I don't know, but and then Bryce Huff is he's his jersey number.
That's a question mark for sure.
His jersey number is 0. So
they write themselves. I'll just say that.
But Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, home runs.
Absolute.
Yeah,
man. You're talking about Quinyon was, man, for a guy who didn't get his first interception until the postseason. Yeah. I mean, listen, he was an absolute shutdown corner during the regular season, which is ridiculous for a rookie. You had guys afraid to throw to the left side of the field. They would rather throw to big play Slay on the right side than throw anywhere near Quinyon Mitchell. And that's a real sign of a great corner. So that's a guy who he's going to be great for years to come. I mean, you look at places like PFF, they even say that Cooper DeJean was better than Quinyon Mitchell. Now, I think there's enough differences in the role where and PFF isn't gospel by any means, but it's enough to at least say that Cooper is a super encouraging prospect moving forward for Philadelphia. I mean, the fact that he already moved into the slot, he's played fantastic. I actually like him in the punt return role. I know it's a little controversial between him and Britton Covey, but I've loved everything that I've seen from Cooper DeJean. So really just great marks hitting on the rookies for Harry Roseman.
Yeah, Vic Fangio doesn't want Cooper doing the returns. He doesn't want him to
Yeah, I
hurt.
can see that. I can
Yeah,
see
I
that.
understand that. I understand that. And for Quinion, even he's been beat a couple times this season. He's even gotten beaten by
By
McLaurin.
Terry McLaurin, yeah.
Yeah, he has. But the thing that really impresses me about him is it didn't break his confidence.
No,
It
no,
didn't.
not at
That
all.
might break a lot of, especially rookie corner
Yeah.
confidences, but it really didn't break his confidence, and that's good. And thank you to the heavens that he's healthy and he's going to play this
Yeah,
week. Because
absolutely.
Isaiah Rogers, I don't know about that one, man.
Man. So here's the thing I'll say. So Rodgers, he gave up a couple big plays last week, but he also had a couple really big preventative plays as well. I think
He
what's
did.
tough
He
is that
did.
it's you're going to always notice when you go from a guy like Keon Mitchell to really anyone else,
Mm-hmm.
and it's fair or unfair. It just kind of is what it is. There's a standard that's been set by the level of play of a certain guy. So when you see
A
somebody
rookie.
come in and they're not at that level,
Mm-hmm.
so like for instance, what we saw when Darius Slay missed time early in the year, and you saw Keely Ringo on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
This is no slight to Darius Slay, who I think has improved as the season has gone on and was fantastic last week. But Keely Ringo to Darius Slay was a little bit closer to what we saw from Keon Mitchell to Isaiah Rogers. But that being said, still a couple key plays, really great positioning on that fumble to be able to return that near to, I think he ended up around the 10-yard line right about there.
Mm-hmm.
So really great positioning. It's just good field awareness by Isaiah Rogers. So like it's really tough when you're going up against. And I was actually just singing his praises earlier today. Matt Stafford's a hell of a quarterback. I get
Yes.
it. They have great receivers in Cooper Kupp and Demarcus Robinson is actually a very good receiver. Puka Nacua is obviously one of the top receivers in the entire league.
Yeah.
I get that. Matt Stafford is one hell of a quarterback, and so to go up against him, there's always going to be plays where a guy may look out of position here or honestly may just give up a catch to a bigger receiver. That's part of the problem too when you're going up against LA. But all in all, I'm pretty confident in Isaiah Rogers in that backup capacity.
Mm-hmm.
But man, I am very glad that the Keon Mitchell's back, just because
Yeah.
he's that good. He's that guy for sure. So
Yeah.
to have him back in the lineup is huge.
Yeah. He is. He is. And you foresee Cooper being the slot going forward next season?
I do. I think that the team. I think the team. Well, first of all, CJ is going to be playing safety for a while.
Yes.
And they clearly like Reed, and they clearly like Sidney Brown as well. And I agree with all of that, frankly.
Yeah, I do.
I think that there's a little bit of limitations when you're talking about Reed, and I think Sidney's still a little bit raw, which I appreciate the rawness because it leads to some hits that you love to see. You love defense, you love to see it. So I think they're pretty set for the most part on their safety group. I would
Gotta replace
imagine that they work to bring back Slay next year. Slay likes it in Philly. The Eagles like Slay in Philly. It's going to come down to price because there's a lot of spots that they're going to have to focus on. Obviously, we talked about Zach Bond. We talked about Josh Sweat. Milton Williams is another free agent this offseason.
Yep.
Kai Becton, what are they going to do with him? So there's a lot of question marks that all revolve around money, and we know Howie's the cap wizard and all that. So he'll find a way to get done what he deems necessary. But I think ideally in their minds they're going to bring back Darius. If they don't bring back Slay, though, I think you can make an argument to put on the outside. But with the way the NFL's moved and how utilized the slot is at this point, I mean, you have a lot of guys top receivers on teams who are slot versatile. I mean, you look at guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown, and they're running in the slot a lot. AJ Brown even takes, and Devontae Smith alternate taking routes in the slot. Like, even if you don't have that, quote unquote slot receiver where that's where he's lining up, 10 times out of 10. Well, one, you're getting a lot of these top receivers lining up there. So you want a guy who's really capable in coverage there. But on top of that as well, it's just that safety valve it's so nice to have a quality defender in that spot. Avonte Maddox really was that for a number of years.
He was.
It's not bad to have that in a guy with a little more size, though. So to have that in a bigger body, I feel pretty good about that moving forward. And even I'll say, even if they do move on from Slay, and they want to put Keely Ringo on the outside, I kind of support that as well. I'm a big Keely Ringo guy. I know that he's been big on special teams more so than on the outside, but I think he's been very respectable, to say the least, when put on the outside. So I'm confident in talking about Cooper DeJean playing the slot moving forward.
Yeah, I would think Howie would invest in a draft pick on corner at some
I wouldn't
point.
be surprised for depth if nothing
They're
else.
hitting on it too, so
Yeah.
they definitely are. All right, let's talk about the offense a little bit. Jalen Hurts, he was a full go today in practice. Um, we don't know if he's going to be. I mean, they say he's 100%. They say he's good to go, but do you think the legs is going to affect him Sunday?
Man, I would. This is speculation. Let me preface it with that first. I would imagine he's in some sort of a brace on Sunday, and it could be a lightweight brace, whatever the case may be. Any kind of brace, and you can talk to Joel Embiid, you can talk to Paul George. Any type of brace is going to affect your movement as a professional athlete, right? So, are we going to see him burst, a half the field run on the first drive like we did last week against LA? I don't think necessarily, but I think we are going to be looking at a guy who is feeling a bit better than how he felt after that hit in that game against LA, right? So I think we're talking about a guy who, as a quarterback, as a passer, right? Because that's what everyone wants to focus on, is Jalen as a passer. I think he's going to be fine. I think he's going to look confident. A lot of it really is going to depend on Kellen Moore and Nick Sirianni to put him in a spot to succeed. So one thing that they did really early against LA was that they worked Jalen under center and play action, and they were able to get a really great route to develop for Dallas Goedert. I want to say it was about for 14, 15 yards. I can't quite remember exactly. Mm-hmm. And it works to a T, and then they completely went away from it. So they need to stick to the stuff that works and do their quarterback a favor. But as far as an ability standpoint, I think he's definitely going to be able to play strong enough to put up a good fight against the Commanders. It's just a matter of, is he 100% Jalen Hurts or is he 90% Jalen Hurts? And it's really about maximizing whatever percentage he is coming back into the field at.
Yeah, I would assume that if he wasn't able to do everything he wanted to on the field, I don't think Jalen Hurts would play. I think he's smart enough. I would give him that much credit to say he was smart enough not to put this team in jeopardy if he wasn't able to do what he needed to do on the football field. Now, I will say this. I will agree with you, especially when he took that safety. He wasn't right. He couldn't move, and that was obvious. But I always say this on a podcast, and Lucas agrees with me. Less is more with Jalen. If you simplify the offense, and you got multiple plays that are pretty much automatic with Jalen. The AJ Brown slot, anything with Dallas Goedert is pretty much a good play to make. I would say
they incorporated several tight end screens last week, and that's helping Jalen, right?
Yeah.
That's stuff where, exactly like you're saying, like, kind of keep it simple. And this is, people love to, debate the term like game manager and stuff like that. And, Eagles fans have used it as a slur against Brock Purdy, but then we'll use it to praise Jalen and whatever. And it's like, the thing I appreciate about Jalen Hurts is that he tends to play as the Eagles need him, right? You have guys who their argument pro Jalen is, always, well, he's a winner, he wins games. It's like, well, how do you qualify that? Like, what does that actually look like? I think the way that it looks is that he plays how the Eagles need him to play, and you look at how he played against the Rams. Like, the Rams defense is young but talented, especially in the pass rush. So what does Jalen do early on? Well, Jalen opens up the field with himself as a runner, which not only opens up the passing game, but opens up the run game for Saquon as well, because you're worried about effectively two running threats in the backfield at all times, right? So How do they get into that position? They put Jalen in a position to succeed. So I definitely agree. Like, keeping things simple to a degree. Stuff like the AJ Brown slot, like you mentioned, stuff like the Dallas Goedert, tight end screen. And I talked about the bootleg off of the play action earlier. Like, do stuff to put him in a position to succeed, and Jalen will thrive. Like, can he do the more difficult stuff? I think he can. Maybe not at the level of a guy like Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, or Patrick Mahomes. But the thing that you want to do for any quarterback, any player, is put them in a position to succeed. This shouldn't be a controversial issue. And yet, for some reason, we walk into this every Sunday. Moore and Sirianni didn't put him in a position to succeed. The script was bad. X, Y, and Z. That hasn't been the case as of late. They just have to make sure they keep that energy going.
Yeah, I agree with that, especially when it comes to Kellen Moore. And he's a passing guy, more so than rushing. They've changed his offense because Saquon is Saquon. He's a future Hall of Famer. They've changed his offense to a rushing offense. And so to somewhat of a degree, it's hurt Jalen Hurts as a passer, and he gets that criticism on the media a lot too. But like you said, in the games where Jalen Hurts needs to throw the ball, I think he's an efficient passer. He's an accurate passer. Yeah. He throws good deep balls. Jalen can beat you with his arm, and I think that's going to be a big key for this Sunday coming up.
Jalen, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes all threw for less than 200 yards last week, and guess what? They all won. So,
but Jalen was the only one that got criticism for.
But Jalen's the only one who got criticism for sure. You're right about that. But my point is, like, this is not crazy what's happening in Philadelphia. People act like it is, and you look at games like the game against Pittsburgh, like, they've shown that they can throw the ball like that. Now, I get it. Like, you're watching all 22, you see some hideous play design. I mean, there's plays where you got guys, you have 4 receivers, they're all 15, 20 yards down the field clumped together, and there's nowhere for Jalen to throw. There's times where Jalen's straight up missing his guy. People talk about, like, the safety that he took. Dallas Goedert was wide open. I think you have to watch that play in real time to be able to understand how quick of a decision that actually is before you, on a bad knee, mind you, before you truly criticize that. So, like, before you truly criticize that, you have to take all that into account. Jalen obviously has a problem holding onto the ball and making, I would call it, sometimes even scared decisions behind the line. But part of that's the offensive line having to play better. Part of that's better pass blocking for the running backs. And then part of that's Jalen Hurts making the decision making. And then again, what it all comes down to is the coaching staff putting him into a position to succeed. You're dropping back your quarterback who's basically on one leg. Your offensive line has been struggling against this pass rush all game. You're not putting your guy in a position to succeed. And I get it. You had the safety 5 in Dallas Goedert. He clearly wasn't the top read in that play. That's the problem. Is like, why are you not focusing on chunk yards in that situation? Like, you should be calling a play where if you do have a guy who's operating as that safety valve, he should not be anything past your second look in that kind of situation. And he wasn't. He was not a top 2 look in that situation. That's a big part of the problem. But I have full confidence in Jalen Hurts' ability. As long as the knee is improved from Sunday, doesn't have to be 100%. As long as it's improved, I still have confidence that they can go out there and they can win this game. Because even if he is limited as a runner, Saquon Barkley is the MVP of this league. Don't let anyone tell you different. And on top of that, you have a guy in Jalen Hurts who has really learned how to not put the ball in harm's way. And I get it. At times, it looked ugly against that pass rush. Yeah. This is not that Rams pass rush that they're facing this Sunday. I think we're looking at a better game from the Eagles' offensive line. I know Cam Jurgens is hurt. I know people are worried about whether or not he will actually even play. I think he's going to play personally. Yeah. But I have a much better feeling just knowing the parts that they're going up against, hearing Jalen's confidence throughout the week about the situation. And on top of that, just sometimes, like, you really just have to get those initial aches and pains out of the way. Like, sometimes it's a case of you being, whether you're hurt or you're injured. I think Jalen was hurt. So I feel a lot better about him being hurt and coming back healthy this week than if he was injured.
Okay, fair enough. So going into this game, what are some key players to watch?
this is not going to be exciting, right? So first and foremost, Saquon Barkley. Like if we're talking about the offense, it's going to be Saquon Barkley, right?
Yeah.
You're talking about the workhorse who just went off for 200 yards, which is an Eagles postseason record. I think the 5th most rushing yards in the postseason game all time, if I'm not mistaken, by a running back at the very least. So just an incredibly impressive game. You're gonna maybe not see that exact same performance because while the pass rush is not the same in Washington, the run defense is a little bit better. And now it's not anything I'm afraid of stopping Saquon Barkley. You've had a lot of Washington fans puffing out their chests saying, well, if Jalen's a little bit hurt, we're just going to load the box and we'd like to see them run against that. People have tried to load the box against Philadelphia throughout the year. This is not a new development that Philadelphia likes to run the ball this year. This has been the way that they've been playing since week 5, right? Or rather week 6. So Saquon's going to be the guy to watch offensively. I don't care if you put 8 in the box. Like he's going to find a way to get passes is my feeling, or he's going to damn well try. Defensively, I cannot emphasize this enough. Jalen Carter is the player to watch. Not only because he is coming off of an incredible performance against the LA Rams. Now, you look at the box numbers, and it's not going to floor you. Like you'll say it's a good game, but it's not going to floor you. When I tell you it's one of the greatest defensive performances in Philadelphia Eagles postseason history, I'm not even kidding. Part of that is there haven't been a ton of great individual defensive performances in postseason history for the Eagles. Part of that is Jalen had an incredible game. And it's not just about his numbers that he got on the field. When you look at the attention he takes, as double teamed as he is, the pressures that he's adding in as well. Now you factor in the fact that you're losing your best offensive lineman if you're Washington. Your interior guy who was set to match up against Jalen Carter.
You talk about Sam Cosmi.
I'm talking about Sam Cosmi, man. Like to be down Sam Cosmi is such a gut punch to Washington. And the thing is, like, not only is it an opportunity for Jalen to go up against, whether it's less experienced or frankly less talented offensive line guys on the other end, that communication between the offensive line, I don't want to call it necessarily fragile, but I'll call it crucial, right? So it's so rare. We've seen this in Philadelphia where guys kind of rotate in and out at times for various reasons, right? And Philadelphia is able to kind of weather that storm. That's the Jeff Stoutland effect. That is the quality of the players in Philadelphia's offensive line. That is not the case across the league. So when you look at a situation where you lose your top offensive lineman, that could drastically affect the way that this entire Washington line plays. And Jalen Carter is going to look to feast early and often.
And when you really look at it, Jalen Carter is coming right up the middle. That's where you want to be, especially when you're playing a quarterback like Jaden Daniels. You want to keep him in the box. You don't want him going out because if he can scramble, he can really slice you up 10, 20, 30 yards run. So I think I agree with you. He's definitely going to be a key part. I also think Quinyon is going to be a key player just because he's on McLaurin. McLaurin had a good game against the Lions. And if you could take one weapon away from Jaden Daniels, make him more one-dimensional, where he's basically have to use his safety valve on Zach Ertz, former Eagle great. I'll take that trade-off.
And Maurice, I'll tell you this. Like we talked about the play earlier where Kenyon frankly just lost Terry McLaurin. You and I both remember that. You know who else hasn't forgotten that? Kenyon Mitchell. And with the motor that this guy has, the heat that he plays with, he's going to be thinking about that play a lot throughout the game. So
yes,
I'm saying if there's a one-on-one matchup to watch, it's probably going to be Kenyon Mitchell and Terry McLaurin.
Yep, I agree with you. But speaking of Jaden Daniels, because all throughout the season on 13 Rings, I've given him his credit. I've given him his due. Now, I wasn't going to be a hater or a homer, Eagles homer. I've said that he has the opportunity to be a top 5 quarterback in this league. I've even given him the name Mini Mahomes just because of the game-winning touchdown drives he's had so far in his career. Let me ask you this: does Jaden Daniels have a flaw right now that the Eagles can exploit, or Vic Fangio can exploit?
So I hate to say this, like his flaw is size, right? That's
Mm.
his flaw right now. So what that means, and I'm going to try and say this in a bit more of a tasteful way than how some people out of Washington have been talking about it, but you got to get bodies on the quarterback, right? That's effectively it. You got to throw him off his game. Legally, you have to get pressures, you have to get hits, you have to get sacks. That's what you have to get to really kind of throw him off his groove a little bit. You have to make him feel, especially, and I get it that this isn't a guy playing out in LA coming to Philly. He's a little bit more used to it, but then again, he's only a rookie. It's going to be cold in Philly. I mean, it's going to be warmer than it is now. It's going to be like 40 degrees, but it's going to be cold in Philly. Let him feel the cold turf. That's what they had to figure out a way to do. And whether it's Jalen Carter, which I think at least once it probably will be. Josh Sweat he's been kind of sneaky this season. And I know we talked about like he's not necessarily blowing up, left and right highlight plays here and there, but it feels like once you kind of get that pocket to collapse a bit, and quarterbacks are either looking to step up or step out. That's when out of left field, here comes Josh Sweat, right? And then on top of that, you got the speed demon and Nolan Smith. So, between specifically those three guys, but you have a great rotation at D tackle too. Jordan Davis has shown a lot more in terms of being able to affect passing game. Milton Williams has been fantastic all season. There's got Moro Ojomo,
Hunt.
There's Hunt has been so encouraging this season. When they drafted him, and I loved him before the draft, but I thought he was a lot more developmental than
a project. Yeah, that's what I said too. Yeah,
he's proven to be a lot more ready for the moment than I initially thought, and full credit to him for that. But Jalen Hunt's definitely a guy that you got to watch, it's just been tremendous play from. And then we'll even talk about the linebackers. Like Zach Bond's a guy who we talked about him doing it all. He's getting in the backfield. He's getting these quarterbacks down. He's getting his name, his hat, thrown into the ring in terms of guys who are kind of mucking things up for the quarterback. So there's a lot of different ways that you can go with this. If you're Vic Fangio, expect him to explore every option effectively. And I'll tell you this: it's just there's not a surefire way to shut down a guy like Jalen Daniels. I try to be careful with rookie quarterbacks because we saw this with CJ Stroud. Everybody crowned him as like a top 5, top 3 quarterback, and we saw the regression, right? It's so easy to see that in year 2. But based on the tools, and I still believe this about CJ Stroud, I think he's got fantastic tools. But the tools that Jalen Daniels presents, you are talking about a guy who has the potential to be a top 5 quarterback. And he is fully aware of it right now. His confidence, which is key for a rookie, his confidence has likely never been higher. It's up to Philadelphia to bring that confidence down.
Okay, fair enough. So let me ask you this: let me ask you this in a different way. The Eagles win if.
Yeah. So the Eagles win if they score more than the Commanders. No, I would say the Eagles win if I don't see this being a shootout, right? I don't see this being kind of like how it was against Detroit. I see this being a bit slower, a bit lower scoring. I would say the Eagles win if they hold the Commanders. I'll call it. If they hold them below 30, I think the Eagles will win this game.
All right. I've said on the pod.
Frankly, I think the score will be a good bit lower than that. Like even if the Eagles lose, I think the score will be a good bit lower than that. But I'm confident if they can hold them below 30, I think that Philadelphia will win this game because they're going to find a way to move the ball on offense. They're going to find a way. They had, I think, 4 turnovers against Jalen Daniels in the game. They lost, mind you.
5 turnovers. Yeah, 5.
5 turnovers in the game that Jalen Hurts left due to injury.
Yep.
So they're going to find ways to force turnovers. They're going to find ways to And if it wasn't for Jalen Hurts getting injured, which I'm like, we don't need to relitigate if it was a late hit or whatever. All I'll say is this: if Jalen Hurts stays in that game, I don't think there's a soul alive who truly believes the Eagles lose that game. Right.
I agree with you.
And that just comes down to being able to maintain drives. So I know a lot of people are looking at this as like, oh, these two division rivals, they came in 1-1. You know, who's going to win this rubber match? For me, honestly, like the Commanders are a talented team. I'm not trying to take a thing away from them. I think the Eagles are next level. So whether it was the Commanders or whether it was the Detroit Lions, I would have felt the same way. I think this team, I don't know that they're going to win it all, but I feel pretty good about getting to the big game.
Okay. And I got to be fair and ask you the opposite of the question. The Eagles lose if.
This is what it always comes down to. If they don't take care of the ball, you know, that's the big thing. You know, it's when they've been on this very long, you know, for the most part long. Obviously, there was the Commanders hiccup, but since the bye week, they've played tremendous football, right? And one of the key components to that has been taking care of the ball. To begin the season, Jalen was not taking care of the ball. He's done a fantastic job since that bye week. The rest of the team's done a fantastic job since that bye week. Moreover, the defense has started forcing takeaways as well. At the same time that Jalen stopped, and I say Jalen, the whole Eagles offense stopped giving the ball away, right? They need to keep that same energy. They need to make sure that they are still winning that turnover battle and winning it strong, because they did. By year's end, they were winning that turnover battle strong. That's what they need to keep up. They need to make sure that they're not flippant with the ball. They got to make sure they're securing possessions. They can't be taking sacks that take them out of field goal range, which I'm including that, you know, even in that turnover concept, because they're drive killers, you know.
We didn't mention Jake Elliott.
Hey, yeah, man. But listen, like, I'll let me talk about Jake Elliott real quick. So,
how do you miss extra points but make field goals? I don't get it.
Never have I been so terrified than watching that man kick in the snow. But I will give him this: he missed some crucial bunnies with those extra points.
Yeah.
However, he hit some really difficult field goals in some tough conditions, in clutch moments.
Yeah.
I mean, like, listen, if there was something that was going to say, wake up, Jake Elliott, I think it was that game last week. So, you know, hopefully that's the case. You know, we still don't really know exactly what it is. I still want him kicking kickoffs. You know, we've seen, I feel, a big difference with him as a kicker, you know, specifically like in field goal situations when he is kicking those kickoffs. And on top of that, I love Braden Mann. I think he's done a fantastic job. I think he's a great punter. I think he should stay in Philadelphia for a long time. He does not get the ball in the end zone like he needs to on those kickoffs. And I think that you're looking at a bit more of an electric team in Washington than you were with LA. So it's something that you got to watch out for on Sunday.
Yeah, I agree. And one thing to mention, time of possession. I think that's a big key to the game also.
Always key.
For sure. Yeah, the team who has time of possession has a much greater chance of winning this football game. You don't want Jaden Daniels marching down the field. It doesn't end well that way. It doesn't end well.
But on top of that, what I'll say too is you have to guard the explosive play, and that's one thing that Vic Fangio's defense is really all about, is preventing that big play. But you know, we saw the defense get out of whack because the offense wasn't doing their job against Washington last time. That's what led to these quicker drives. And the thing of it too, if there's one thing that scares me a little bit, it's Washington looking at that film against LA from those last few minutes, because this defense does not play well when they play rush. The defensive line has to stay fresh. You know, they have to stay moving. Now, the benefit throughout the entirety of the game is that you can kind of fudge your way through a lot of that. You know, you can kind of, you know, I got a cramp here. I got coming up limp here. And you can slow the game down without penalty, right?
Yeah.
That you can't do that through the course of the entire game, right? You can't get away with that in those more kind of clutch, finite moments. But they need to figure out a way to really slow things down. Just slow down the Commanders' offense. Make them double, triple think things. Don't let them dink and dunk their way down the field on some type of 2-minute offense. because I think that's where you're going to really kind of run into some troubles if you're this Eagles defense.
Yeah, Eckler. Once again, Zach Ertz, who's still a
Ertz
threat.
still a threat. Incredible.
Yeah, he still is. All right, so let's wrap this up by asking you one more question, final question. What is the final score of this game? What you guys at?
I'm going to go with 23-17 Eagles.
23-17? I got 28-21.
I think that's a great score, too.
I think it is. I think they're going to be in arm's reach, and I think Jade is going to give them one more push. But I think the defense is going to come up again when it needs to. I really do.
Listen, man, defense wins championships. It also gets you to championship games. So I think that's what Philadelphia is going to be relying on this year.
And that's why I've always been confident in this team all season. I had them going 13-4 this season, so I was pretty close. They can run the ball. They have a great line, both sides, offense and defensive line. And their defense is better than I expected it to be. Don't get me wrong, before the season started. I didn't think they was going to be the number one defense in the league. But I thought they were going to be an upgrade over last season with Vic at the helm. So they have the ingredients to win this game and go on the Super Bowl. We'll see who we play. But first things first, they got to win this game. So, yeah, Zach, I want to thank you for coming on, man.
Sure.
Really, really appreciate it, man. This was a long time.
Happy to be here.
This was a long time coming. Next time we got to talk about the Sixers.
I guess we do. I guess I am legally obligated to talk about them sometime. Yeah.
Yeah, before we go, Zach, let the audience know where they can find you again real quick.
For sure. Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter or Blue Sky at Chavo NBA on both, I believe. You can find my work on my sports content on phillysportsnetwork.com. And then you can find some sports content and more general Philly content on Metro Philadelphia. Oh, right. And also, just one more time, got to pump Flipping the Birds again. Not to advertise my podcast on yours, but again, you can't have too much Eagles content.
No, definitely.
So every Tuesday, 7:30, and Saturday mornings as well, we got Flipping the Birds coming to you. Just honestly, if you like to have fun and talk ball, what's great about what we do as well is that we incorporate the audience a lot also. So if you want to join us and talk some football, talk some birds, definitely stop on by, listen to Flipping the Birds on PSN's YouTube channel. Or you can find it on Twitter as well.
It's a must do. Must do. Zach, thank you.
I appreciate you, Maurice.
All right. For everybody out there, I want to thank you all for listening. This has been a great episode of Philly Cooking with Maurice. I want to thank everybody for listening. And what else can I say? But go Birds.
Go Birds.